The Xylos were a species of straight lines and clear purposes. Their home world, Xylos Prime, was a marvel of ordered cities and perfectly allocated resources. Their society was built on pragmatism, on quantifiable results, and on a deep-seated belief that every action should serve a tangible, productive end. When they encountered humanity, a species barely out of its planetary cradle, yet already reaching for the stars, the Xylos were, to put it mildly, perplexed. Humans were messy, emotional, and most confusingly, dedicated vast amounts of their civilization's output to something the Xylos categorized as non-productive stimulus engagements, or, as humans called it, entertainment. Of all forms of human entertainment, their digital games were the most baffling to the Xylos. Intricate simulations, consuming gigawatts of power and countless hours of human attention, all for what? Bragging rights, flashing lights. The concept was alien. The Xylos had simulations, of course, but these were for training, for predicting resource yields, or for modeling astronomical events. They were tools, not pastimes. Researcher Xyla, a junior member of the Xylos Cultural Observation File, was tasked with a deep dive into human digital networks as part of a routine cultural exchange program. Xyla's designated focus: recreational data sinks. It was considered a low-priority assignment, something to keep a junior researcher busy and to add a few more terabytes of incomprehensible data to the Xylos archives. Xyla, like all Xylos, possessed a mind honed for pattern recognition and logical deduction. They approached the human internet with a detached curiosity, expecting to categorize vast fields of digital fluff. Their initial foray confirmed their biases: endless streams of moving images, music of questionable harmonic structure, and then the games. Xyla observed records of humans controlling colorful avatars, jumping on platforms, shooting at pixelated monsters. Primitive reflex tests, Xyla noted in their initial report. Displays of minor hand-eye coordination with no discernible productive output. Resource expenditure, significant. Apparent societal benefit, negligible. Then Xyla stumbled upon something called esports. The term itself was a contradiction to Xylo's sensibilities. Sport involved physical exertion for health or tactical training. Electronic sport seemed a mockery. Yet the scale was undeniable. Vast auditoriums filled with cheering humans, watching other humans manipulate digital constructs on massive screens. Millions more watched online. The prize pools, Xyla calculated, could fund a small Xylos research outpost for a standard year. Curious, Xyla subvocalized, their multifaceted optical sensors focusing intently. The emotional investment is disproportionate to the activity's tangible value. Driven by this anomaly, Xyla bypassed the simplistic games and delved into the more complex offerings. They found records of grand strategy games where individual humans, or teams, controlled the destinies of entire star-spanning empires over weeks or months of play. They found MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, where tens of thousands of humans interacted in persistent digital worlds, forming guilds, building economies, and waging wars. Xyla selected one such game for intensive study, a popular title known as Nova Dominion. The public servers had logged gameplay data for over a standard decade. Xyla, with the Xylo's superior processing ability, began to sift through it, not as a player, but as an analyst dissecting a newly discovered ecosystem. What they found was not frivolous play. The first layer was the sheer strategic depth. Players in Nova Dominion managed resources, researched technologies, designed spacecraft, and commanded fleets. They formed alliances, negotiated treaties, and engaged in diplomacy that was as complex and treacherous as any real-world political landscape the Xylos had studied. Xylo watched as player-run corporations, some numbering thousands of individuals, executed long-term economic strategies designed to dominate virtual markets or cripple rivals. They saw meticulously planned military campaigns, feints within feints, and logistical chains that would have impressed a Xylos quartermaster. The level of strategic planning involved in these war games is considerable, Xyla reported to their file superior, a more senior Xylos named Krill. Participants appear to be simulating grand strategic warfare with a high degree of detail. Krill, who was overseeing a project on optimizing Xylo's nutrient paste distribution, barely acknowledged the report. Simulations, Xyla. Humans are inefficient. They require elaborate distractions. Continue your cataloging. But Xyla couldn't dismiss it. They dug deeper. They discovered the concept of the metagame, the game played outside the game. Players developed sophisticated analytical tools to dissect game mechanics, calculate optimal builds, and predict opponent strategies. Entire communities existed solely to theorize, to test, to innovate, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible within the game's rules. This wasn't just playing. This was relentless, iterative optimization. Then came the psychological dimension. Xyla analyzed chat logs, forum posts, and recorded voice communications. They saw humans employing propaganda to demoralize enemies, spreading disinformation to sow confusion, and using psychological profiles of rival leaders to predict their actions or exploit their weaknesses. They witnessed elaborate espionage operations, with players infiltrating enemy corporations for months, even years, patiently gathering intelligence before a devastating betrayal. The levels of duplicity, patience, and ruthlessness were unsettling. These were not traits the Xylos associated with play. One particular incident Xyla analyzed involved two major player alliances in Nova Dominion that had been locked in a virtual Cold War for over 2 standard years. Alliance Alpha, known for its aggressive tactics, was poised to attack Alliance Beta, a more economically focused group. Beta, however, had a secret weapon, a single agent, a player known only as Whisper, who had spent 3 years integrated into Alpha's high command. Whisper wasn't just a spy. They were a master manipulator. Over time, Whisper had subtly altered Alpha's military doctrines, promoted incompetent but loyal officers, and sowed seeds of mistrust among their best strategists. When Alpha finally launched their grand offensive, it was into a series of perfectly laid traps, their fleets miscoordinated, their intelligence faulty. Alliance Beta didn't just win. They annihilated Alpha, a victory orchestrated by years of patient, psychological warfare and strategic sabotage from a single individual playing a game. Xyla replayed the data logs of the final battle, the comms chatter from Alpha's leadership turning from confident pronouncements to panicked confusion, then to bitter accusations as their virtual empire crumbled. The efficiency of the betrayal, the sheer cold-blooded patience involved, sent a shiver through Xyla's usually placid cognitive processes. "This is not mere recreation," Xyla transmitted to Krill, this time marking the message with a priority flag usually reserved for imminent resource shortages or system failures. The human dedication to these games involves the development and execution of strategies that rival, and in some cases exceed, the complexity of actual interstellar conflict documented in our historical archives. They are practicing warfare, deception, and economic dominance on a continuous planetary scale for enjoyment. Krill, annoyed by the priority flag, finally paid attention. They reviewed Xyla's compiled data, the intricate flowcharts of player-run intelligence networks, the economic models of virtual empires that had risen and fallen, the psychological profiles of prominent gamers who commanded legions of followers with cult-like devotion. Krill, a being of pure logic, felt something akin to unease. The term game implies a triviality that is not reflected in this data, Krill conceded. The scale of participation is also a factor, millions engaging in these simulations daily. Xyla presented their crowning piece of evidence, an analysis of a now-defunct game called World Hive Mind. In this game, players weren't individuals. They were competing collective intelligences, each formed by thousands of human minds networked together, attempting to solve planet-scale logistical and existential threats against a sophisticated AI antagonist. The game had run for 5 years before its servers were shut down. The Xylos had always prided themselves on their networked intelligence, but the chaotic, adaptive, and terrifyingly innovative solutions the human hives generated in World Hive Mind were of a different order. They were less logical, perhaps, but more resilient, more unpredictable, capable of leaps of intuition that Xylo's collective intelligence, bound by rigid protocols, struggled to replicate. Humans had simulated being a Gestalt consciousness, and they had excelled at it. They are not just simulating war between factions, Xylo explained. They are simulating different modes of existence, different organizational structures, different ways of thinking and competing. They are stress-testing civilizational models. Their games are a crucible for rapid, iterative evolution of strategy and societal adaptation. The "oh shit" moment for the Xylo's high command came when Xylo presented their findings in person, their usually calm demeanor replaced by a suppressed urgency. Xylo displayed a montage. A human child, no more than 8 Earth years old, expertly commanding a squadron in a complex real-time strategy game, issuing orders with a speed and precision that would test a Xylo's drone controller. Then, a teenager, leading a guild of hundreds in Nova Dominion, giving a rousing speech filled with rhetoric designed to inspire loyalty and sacrifice before a major virtual battle, followed by footage of a team of adult humans, faces grim with concentration, collaborating in a high-stakes cybersecurity challenge. Essentially a wargame of digital intrusion and defense, their actions indistinguishable from actual cyber warfare. For generations, Xylo concluded, their voice resonating in the silent Xylo's chamber, humanity has been engaged in the most diverse, widespread, and continuous set of wargame simulations ever recorded. They have honed their capacity for strategic thinking, deception, rapid adaptation, economic warfare, psychological manipulation, and ruthless efficiency. They do this voluntarily. They call it fun. They have, in essence, been training for total war since the dawn of their digital age, and they have become exceptionally good at it. What we dismissed as frivolous entertainment is, in fact, a planetary-scale combat doctrine incubator. A profound silence filled the chamber. The Xylo's leaders, beings who prided themselves on their foresight and understanding of galactic power dynamics, looked at each other. The implications were staggering. Humanity, the young, seemingly chaotic species, wasn't just dabbling in games. They were, perhaps unintentionally, forging themselves into the most versatile and potentially dangerous strategic thinkers in the galaxy. Their entire civilian population, to varying degrees, was familiar with concepts of resource management under pressure, asymmetrical warfare, and the vital importance of intelligence and counterintelligence. The Xylo's High Command immediately classified Xylo's research at the highest level. They dispatched discrete observation teams, not just to human internet data, but to analyze the effects of this gaming culture on human problem-solving, on their innovation rates, even on their military doctrines, which were, the Xylos now realized with dawning horror, likely influenced by these games, in ways they hadn't even begun to comprehend. The Xylos began to see patterns everywhere. The way human corporations competed ruthlessly in galactic markets, often employing tactics that seemed to come straight from a tycoon simulation. The unconventional solutions human explorers sometimes devised for unexpected problems, reminiscent of the out-of-the-box thinking rewarded in puzzle games. The surprising effectiveness of certain human diplomatic ploys, which echoed the social maneuvering seen in complex online role-playing scenarios. A new, terrifying perception of humanity began to spread through the Xylo's leadership, and from there, cautiously, to their closest allies. The old view of humans as frivolous and inefficient was replaced by a grudging, fearful respect. Their play was not passivity, it was relentless, distributed, and highly effective training. The official Xylo's advisory disseminated to the Galactic Concord was carefully worded, avoiding overt panic, but carrying a chilling subtext. Subject: Human recreational data sinks, revised threat assessment. Previous analyses categorizing human gaming activities as low-impact cultural phenomena are now considered obsolete. Extensive data suggests these activities function as large-scale, voluntary, and highly effective training modules for complex strategic thinking, logistical management, psyops, and unconventional warfare. Human proficiency in these simulated environments demonstrates a capacity for rapid adaptation and strategic innovation that should not be underestimated. It is advised that all interactions with human populations take into account the pervasive influence of these war games on their cognitive and strategic paradigms. Approach with caution and an awareness that their perceived play may mask a deeply ingrained aptitude for sophisticated conflict. The galaxy did not immediately understand. Some species, like the militaristic Cathar, scoffed. "They play with lights while we drill with plasma," their ambassador had boomed. But others, those who had more subtle dealings with humanity, or those who had access to more detailed intelligence, began to listen. Legends of Earth's War Games of Sol began to circulate, not as tales of fun and leisure, but as whispers of a species that had turned the art of war, in its broadest sense, into a planetary pastime. Humanity, largely oblivious, continued to play their games, pushing updates, forming guilds, complaining about lag, and eagerly awaiting the next big release. They were just having fun. They had no idea that across the vastness of space, the most logical, pragmatic minds in the galaxy were now watching their entertainment, with a mixture of cosmic dread and profound, unwilling admiration, wondering what would happen if humanity ever decided to play for keeps on a galactic scale. The Xylos, for one, were no longer eager to find out. Their simulations now included a new, unpredictable variable, the human play factor, and it consistently skewed galactic outcomes toward chaos and surprising human dominance.